Alright guys, welcome back to my channel, and I'm coming at you with my Uril the Miststalker deck profile. I think my deck profile, the last one I uploaded for this deck was a little under 2 years ago, and some things have changed, so I just wanted to update it. He's a really awesome commander, and I just was talking about him the other day with my buddy, and we were talking about hexproof on commanders, and he was like, yeah, you would know. And I have 28 different decks at this point, so I couldn't even remember which one he was talking about. He goes, yeah, Uril. He was like dealing with that thing. And I was like, oh yeah, I forgot. And I told him, and this is the truth, I would run Uril as this commander even if it didn't have the hexproof. The hexproof is just like an amazing add-on bonus. And there's a lot of times where my opponents are like, and I just hear them like shaking their heads or like, saying like under their breath, like fucking hexproof. And I'm like, yeah, what happened? Like they normally have a Swords to Plowshares, Path to Exile, something. So anyway, Uril is a 5 mana, 5/5, and Naya colors. Hexproof gets +2/+2 for each aura attached to it. So we'll go into the deck profile. I am Mr. Basic, so I do run 12 of each of these: 12 mountains, 12 forests, 12 plains. I have non-basic hate. That's the reason why I do it. It also keeps the cost of my decks down, so that's why I like it. And people give me crap for that and wonder how I play the game. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, if you never tried it, maybe you would know. Do I occasionally get screwed over? I guess sometimes, but a lot of times, more than likely, I'm playing just fine, and I have the non-basic hate in here. Okay, we're gonna leave the enchantments for last, or no? Should we? What do you guys think? We'll do the artifacts first. We'll get that out of the way. All right. Wayfarer's Bauble. Pay 2, sack. Go grab any land you want. Basic land you want. Sorry, put it on the battlefield tap. Because every land in my deck is basic, that's why I say any land you want. Emerald Medallion, Pearl Medallion, Ruby Medallion. You play these because they help reduce the cost of all your stuff. These are my mana rocks. You guys can feel free to run whatever you want, but that's what I like. All right. Let's do... I'm going to do the instance, and then we'll keep going. And like I said, we'll get to the enchantments. I'll save those till last because that's kind of like the spice of the deck. All right. Ram through. And just everything, keep in mind that we're wanting Uril to be a crazy, ridiculous like strength and what he can do. He's, this is a Voltron deck, so Uril's getting beefed up with a bunch of stuff. All right, ram through. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power. Target creature you don't control. If the creature you control has trample, excess damage is dealt to that creature's controller instead. We do have ways of giving Uril or something else trample, because, by the way, we do have backup plans in case Uril gets taken care of, someone gets it off the board. But yeah, so what you like about ram through is if your creature does have trample, you can just pick one of your opponent's smallest creatures, have it fight Uril, and then Uril kills your opponent. It's a kill card that people sleep on. And then the only other instant is Soul's Fire. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to any target. That's great. So I just did my deck profile for Crush the Blood Braided. I literally just, recorded it. So I'll be uploading these pretty close together. I don't run Soul's Fire and Crush. I could. I know it's a cheap card. I could just throw it in there. But the reason I don't run like the sack stuff in this deck is because we don't really want to sacrifice Uril. In the Crush deck, we have way more bigger things that we could sacrifice, get rid of, and we don't care about, and helps fuel our strategy. In this deck, if you are sacrificing Uril the Miststalker, it best be because you killed everybody. Because if you don't, it's dicey if you're going to take the time, get him back up, because all your auras fall off if you do that. So that's why we really don't want to do that. All right, let's do the creatures. Let's get to our Uril backup plans and our support cards, basically. Champion of Flame, 1/1 trample in red. Excuse me, gets +2/+2 for each aura and equipment attached to it. I mean, I guess there's, excuse me, I have the hiccups. There's some people that are going to play this in an equipment deck, but in an aura deck, it's amazing. And once again, it already has trample, and it's a good backup plan. We can get this on the battlefield and started, and in case our opponents are stopping us from getting Uril out, or they just send him back to the command zone or something like that, that's always good. All right, Herald of the Pantheon reduces our enchantments by 1. And whenever you cast an enchantment spell, you gain a life. So that's always good. Being able to reduce our enchantments is great. Core Spirit Dancer gets +2/+2 for each aura attached to it. Whenever you cast an aura spell, draw a card. Great value. Light Pause. This card, people hate this card. My buddies, they're all like, oh, Light Pause, hate that card. It is great. And that's the thing. I know I've seen some people play Light Pause as a mono white commander. And while I'm not disregarding that and saying that's not powerful, in a deck that runs all three of these colors, the doors open up to what we can really do. because obviously just running white, there's only so many amazing white enchantments. So yeah, whenever an aura enters the battlefield you control, if you cast it, search your library for an aura with mana value less than or equal to the aura you just put onto the battlefield. But you put the new aura that you grabbed from the library onto the battlefield attached to Light Pause. So basically, if I play a 3-mana aura onto Uril the Miststalker, let's say, then if Light Pause is on the battlefield, I can go grab a 3-mana or less aura from my library and put it onto Light Pause. So it's just like double trouble, and the amount of value you get from this card is amazing. So if you want to say, what's the secret sauce, or what's the... I know Mitch from Commander's Quarters has the... What is it? The golden pig of the deck. Light Pause might be your golden pig. Okay. Starfield Mystic, reduce your enchantment spells by 1, and then whenever an enchantment is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, it gets a +1/+1 counter on it. But, you know, being able to reduce enchantment costs, that's great. All right, we have Female Mace Windu here. Graceblade Artisan. Gets +2/+2 for each aura attached to it. As soon as I saw the purple lightsaber, I was already like, yeah, I love this card. But once again, it just does what it's a backup commander, basically, in our deck. Getting +2/+2 for each aura attached to it. It's great. Mesa Enchantress gets, whenever you cast an enchantment spell, you draw a card. That's great. Satyr Enchantress, same thing. Cast an enchantment, draw a card. Setessan Champion, basically the same thing, except slightly better. Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield control, put a +1/+1 counter and draw a card. So not only do you get the +1/+1 counters, but if you have a way of bringing back auras, which I feel like we used to run, I'm not sure if I'm still running that stuff in this deck, because our goal is not to rebound from our opponents. Like, well, when I say rebound, what kills me in Commander sometimes is you'll have cards in your hand that's like, if my opponents, clear my board, if my opponents get rid of all my auras, blah, blah, blah. I get that, but the amount of times I'm sitting there with those cards in hand, I'm like, well, my opponents still haven't done that, or if I don't have enough auras for this card to be worth it, it just sits in my hand as a dead card. So, but anyway, if you were to bring back auras with something else, this will still get its trigger and you draw a card and it gets stronger. Verduran Enchantress, whenever you cast an enchantment spell, draw a card. This card was pricey for a long time, and I almost forked over the money to be like, okay, screw it, and it's another Enchantress that I need. But they finally reprinted her in Commander Masters, and that was really nice. Now she's affordable. Armored Skyhunter. I run this in like 2 or 3 different decks, I think. I run this in my Ishin 2 Heavens is 1 deck because it's a great attack trigger. I run this in my Knight deck because it's a Knight, and it's an equipment deck. And then I run this in here because it also lets us cheat out auras. So when it attacks you with the top 6 cards of your library, in this case, if there's an aura among those 6, we get to put it on the battlefield. We can attach it to whatever. It does not have to go to Armored Skyhunter, so that's great. Aura Touched Mage. So I like this card, and my opponents are always in disbelief that this card even exists. But 6 mana, it's a 3/3. When it enters the battlefield, you go grab any aura you want from your library and enchant it onto Aura Touched Mage. I mean, we have some nasty auras in here. I'm sure you guys know what those will be because we play Commander. We kind of know what the Boogeyman cards are. But yeah, great card. And then the last creature, I just had this in my last deck profile with Crush the Bloodbraided. Shriekwood Devourer, 7 mana, 7/5 trample. Whenever you attack with one or more creatures, untap up to X lands, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. So in this case, Uril could be like a 13/13, and we attack, and then it's like, okay, cool. I don't even care if you got a blocker. I'm basically doing a sort of Feast and Famine, except I don't have to get the damage, and I can just tap all my lands, and then keep going from there. So it's a great card. I love it. Okay, we'll do the sorceries, and then we'll save, like I said, enchantments will be last. Farseek, we need to ramp, so that's good. Don't even have to explain that. I mean, there are people that play Farseek in mono green decks. Obviously, you don't know how to read. Rampant Growth, go grab any basic land, put it on the battlefield tap. Cultivate, go grab 2 basic lands. 1 goes on the battlefield tap, 1 goes into your hand. Boiling Seas, we blow up all islands. I said this in my last video. I don't apologize for blowing up lands. I don't feel bad for you. I don't make copies. I don't make treasures, so I have my own limitations. And there's a lot of cards that I don't run that would make my decks ridiculous and busted, but everyone else is running them, so I decline. Instead, I'm going to blow up your lands. So deal with that. Yeah, and I don't feel bad for blue players. Blue players are most of the time doing the things that I'm considering degenerate. Decimate, Gruul staple for me, blow up an artifact, target creature, target enchantment, target land. I said this in the last video, that about 80% of the time, this isn't a problem and that there is a solid enchantment to pick, because that's always the one that is the hiccup, is an enchantment that your opponents have that's worthy of being blown up. But most of the time, it's not a problem. Like I said, people flip out about that. It's 4 mana, guys. If it has to sit in your hand for 1 turn longer, it's not the end of the world. But most of the time, that's not even the case. Usually on turn 4, I can blow up 4 things. Fungal Sprouting. Whatever your strongest creature is, you make that many 1/1 green sapling tokens, where X is its power. So if, like I said, if Uril is a 13/13, we make 13 saplings, which gives us good defense. And that's another thing is I have used this in the past, and there's a few ways that you can make a lot of your stuff really strong, or just get benefits on the amount of creatures you control. So that's just a cool little bonus. Ruination, blow up all non-basic lands. Once again, I'm not apologizing. The same people that will make fun of me for not running non-basics and only running basics are the same people that will cry whenever you blow up their lands. Like, well, that's not fair. And I'm like, okay, so you were about to make a shit ton of copies, or you were going to, do a Cyclonic Rift on me, or you going to, whatever, make a bunch of treasures. I'm like, I don't feel bad for you. Chandra's Ignition, it's a kill card. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to each other creature and each opponent. Yeah. Single combat. Each player chooses a creature or planeswalker they control, then sacrifices the rest. Players can't cast creatures or planeswalker spells until the end of your next turn. So obviously, making everybody basically go down to one creature, that's great. And we are normally a one creature deck. We might have a few, we might have a few of the support creatures that reduce enchantment costs or whatever. But for the most part, this ain't crippling us. The cool part is that players can't cast creatures or planeswalker spells until the end of the next turn, my next turn. So being able to keep our opponents from basically bringing out any other creatures for a whole turn, that's cool. I have my buddy Jesse who loves Planeswalker decks, so being able to prevent him from playing any more Planeswalkers is great. So yeah, 3 Dreams. You go grab any 3 auras you want with different names, put them into your hand, then shuffle. The fact of we can just tutor 3 auras is awesome. Traverse the Outlands. Like I said, if Uril, I put the medium, like, I think 13 power is like the average that Uril would be like throughout a game. Like after a few turns, obviously, but I'm just saying like might be times where he's way stronger than that. There might be times where he's only like 10 power or whatever. But let's say the average is 13. Go grab 13 basic lands, put them onto the battlefield tapped. Pretty great. Winds of Wrath, destroy all creatures that aren't enchanted. They can't be regenerated. Not a problem for our deck, so it's basically a one-sided board wipe. We're cool with that. Full Throttle, this is the newest addition to this deck. Any deck that runs red and deals with combat, you probably should run this card. After this main phase, there are 2 additional combat phases. So basically what you're supposed to do is do your combat, attack the first time, and then your second main, you play Full Throttle. At the beginning of each combat this turn, untap all creatures that attack this turn. So getting 3 combats with Uril the Miststalker, I love that. Being able, basically, I could probably just attack each opponent. I mean, as long as they don't have the blockers or if Uril has Trample. Risk Card's Expertise. Like I said, if Uril's average strength is 13, we'd get to draw 13 cards and then cast something 5 mana or less. That's pretty good. Boundless Realms. Go grab X basic lands with X number of lands you control and put them on the battlefield tap. This is a green staple for me. I love this card. Because this card, like I've always said this, if you play this, it's normally, hey, I'm playing this, and then on the next turn I'm going to win the game because I have so much lands. But even if not, I mean, like Boundless Realms is still, like I said, just look at the value. 7 mana for 7 lands is normally like that's the lowest it could be. That's still pretty good value. Because a lot of times you'll be sitting there mid-game, turn 5, 6, 7, and you're like, okay, like I got my thing out, I got Uril out, but I'm like, I haven't made a difference yet, or I'm still waiting, I'm a long ways away from game. But a lot of times your opponents are still quite a ways away from game. Someone had a setback, someone got rid of their commander, blah, blah, blah. So I know we like to think of the CDH world of everything is just like, oh, we only have 5 turns until like you got to win the game. That's not really true. It is and it isn't. It can be, but over the top, this is also a card that I just threw in here. I was running this in other decks, and it didn't occur to me, but I was like, holy crap. I was like, I really should be running this in just about every permanent deck that I have, and Uril is definitely that. While I do have, I mean, you just saw, this is a stack of sorceries, so I mean, I do run some non-permanents. For the most part, so I mean, let's count it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So I run 15 cards that are not permanents. Everything else is a permanent. So I'm going to read over the top for you. Each player reviews, for 7 mana, each player reveals a number of cards from the top of their library equal to the number of non-land permanents they control, puts all permanent cards revealed this way on the battlefield, puts the rest in the graveyard. I think the reason people shy away from this is, 1, people run a lot of instances of sorceries, but 2, people are afraid of like, okay, how many permanents am I giving my opponents and how dangerous that could be? The reason I don't care is because Uril is already hexproof. So like, it's not like they're going to cheat out some creature that's like, oh, pop Uril. Like, so, you know, over the top is better for me. All the auras that I have, the creatures, whatever, the artifacts. It obviously doesn't count your lands, but anything that over the top reveals, you are going to cheat out lands onto the battlefield. So let's say hypothetically, I've put like 7 auras onto Uril, and then I have like 2 other support creatures. I have like maybe an artifact, and then I got a support creature, then I have Uril himself. So if you do the math there, that's like 3, let's see, what did I say, like 7 auras, or yeah, something like that. So basically, we're talking about like 11 permanents. I get to reveal 11 things off the top of my library, and any permanent just gets onto the battlefield. I can do this on my pre-combat main phase, and then with the amount of stuff that I'd be able to add on to Uril and then other support cards, I can pretty much game my opponent no matter what they get to cheat onto the battlefield. So that's why I think Over the Top is great, especially in a deck like this. All right, let's finish up with the enchantments. Dryad's Favor, 1 mana in green. Enchant creature has Forest Walk, underrated. Great way to combat other green decks. Messenger's Speed, enchanted creature has Trample and Haste. I threw in some other stuff in here that gave our creatures haste, but what I realized is like most of the time, if I have this early on in my hand, it's going to sit there and not do anything. And if I wait till Uril comes out and then play it, it's like, well, I can play Uril out on turn 5. Most of the time, I don't have the additional mana to play a card like Messenger Speed. So this is just nice that, because it also gives Trample, which is amazing, especially from a red card. So I'm happy with this card. I think this is the only one you really need to run like this in this deck. 1 mana and does 2 great things. All That Glitters, enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact and/or enchantment you control. That can get pretty crazy. Alpha Authority, also like this one. Enchanted creature has hexproof and can't be blocked by more than 1 creature. So I think this has actually happened before where someone did something that removed Uril the Miststalker from having hexproof, and then I played Alpha Authority and gave it hexproof back, which that is how the rules work because it does kind of stack like that. That is how that works. If someone has a blanket card that says all your opponent's creatures lose hexproof, giving them hexproof overrides the fact that they just lost it, if that makes any sense. But on top of that, I can throw this onto one of my support creatures, one of my backup commanders, and it's literally like I have Uril the Miststalker all over again. I mean, I don't know if this is supposed to be Uril, but it sure... No, I guess it's not. It's supposed to be one of the Cyclopses. But it should just basically say Uril's Alpha Authority. Okay, but it also can't be blocked by more than 1 creature. So that's cool. So it does give our creatures menace, which is awesome. Angelic Gift enters the battlefield, draw a card, and then you give your enchanted creature flying. That's great value, especially in a deck like this. So think about it. We're giving our creatures +2/+2 because of their abilities, Uril and then the other ones. And then you're giving it flying, and you get to draw a card, all for 2 mana, and most of the time we're only paying 1 for that because we reduce it. That's great value. Fists of Ironwood, enchanted creature... when it enters the battlefield, you make 2 1/1 saplings, and then this gives your enchanted creature trample. Gives us some blockers, and giving something trample is great. And once again, any aura that I have that's only like 2 mana, I would say over 50% of the time, I'm only paying 1 for it. Madcap skills, enchanted creature gets +3/+0 and has menace. Like I said, giving our stuff haste, not as important. Because, yeah, it's cool to attack right away, but a lot of the times the creatures that we're wanting to equip the auras onto have already been on the battlefield, so the haste doesn't matter. But giving stuff menace, that's really good. Mark of Sakiko. I run a Sakiko Mother of Summer deck, so this is just cool that it's kind of flavor for her. But this is a card that I looked at and I was like, this has like so much awesome potential, and I feel like no one runs this in Commander. This is such an old card that this is before I think they even had the aura type of card. So enchanted creature has, whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, add that much green to your mana pool. That mana doesn't cause mana burn, which isn't a thing anymore, but that mana doesn't go away until the end of the turn. So you can do this in, it basically allows, because I know that's always the trouble is if it said like, hey, you add green mana, but then the mana went away as soon as you're done with combat, that would be a problem. So we have a ton of green in this deck, obviously. We got a lot of ramp cards, we got a lot of auras, we got some creatures, all that kind of stuff. So Marcus Sakiko is really good, a way for us to ramp up, and it's only 2 mana to play that card. Power Balance, I said this in my last deck profile, this is a red staple for me. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, you reveal that you don't have to, but you reveal the top card of your library, and if the 2 cards share the same mana value, let's say your opponent play a 3 mana card, and you reveal the top card of your library, and it's a 3 mana card, you get to cast that card without paying its mana cost. Now, I will say this in this deck. Obviously, if we don't have a creature out there, and the cards at the top of our library are auras, I guess we could enchant our opponent's creatures. We're not going to do that. We would just, in that case, choose not to do it. But yeah, it's really cool because the amount of value that this 2 mana card can give you is pretty insane. And I said this in the last video, there's going to be times where your opponents play a card, your top card gets revealed, and let's say it's not the right mana cost, But let's say your top card's a 4 mana cost card. If it's something that they really don't want to see, I mean, maybe it's a 5 mana card, the card that I reveal. Maybe it's a board wipe. They will not play a 5 mana card if they have the ability to. Let's say they have a commander that's 5 mana. They probably don't want to play that. Although I guess in that case, the board wipe would resolve first. But anyway, you get what I'm saying, that a lot of times this can actually stop your opponents from playing stuff. Cetizen Training. Enchanted creature, when this card enters, you draw a card. The enchanted creature gets +1/+0 and has trample. So giving stuff trample, you get to draw a card. You do get the slight power buff, but all that for 2 mana. And once again, we're probably only playing 1 for it. Volcanic Strength, enchanted creature gets +2/+2 and has Mountain Walk. This is great. Once again, we have a way of giving Forest Walk. We have a way of giving Mountain Walk. I think that's it. I don't think we have any other land walk in this deck. But yeah. I mean, +2/+2, Mountain Walk, I mean, you can't argue, especially for the price, for 2 mana. I also realized looking at this deck that this might be the one I have the most foils in, just because there's so many cheap auras, I think, that I just chose to get the foil. But they look nice. Ancestral Mask, this is one of the best ones. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2 for each other enchantment on the battlefield, not just yours. So this is obviously great in Commander, but I would say the lowest I really ever see this card is maybe your creature's getting +6 in this deck. From the Ancestral Mask, and the highest is probably, like, I'm not even joking, +20. So that's great. Armadillo Cloak, enchanted creature gets +2/+2, has trample, and then whenever it deals damage, you gain that much life. You don't have to deal damage to a player. You just deal damage in general to combat to creatures. Enchantress's Presence, whenever you cast an enchantment spell, draw a card. We love that. Fires of Yavimaya, this is a way to give our creatures haste that doesn't have to be on an aura, so that's good. Mael's Aria. So I did my dinosaur deck profile the other day, and I showed this card off. And I'm not going to say I show this card off. People are aware this card exists. But in the dinosaur deck, I can normally do the first 2 abilities easily. But the third ability that lets you win the game, it's hard to pull that off. In this deck, Mael's Aria, if I really wanted to, I could run tutors in this deck and just try to get this out as fast as possible. And it wouldn't be hard to pull this off. So I'll read this to you guys. For 1 red, 1 green, 1 white, at the beginning of your upkeep, put a +1/+1 on each creature you control if you control a creature power 5 or greater. Url's power 5 or greater, so if Url's out there, no problem. Then you gain 10 life if you control a creature power 10 or greater. Not a problem at all. We're going to get that just about every time we can. Then you win the game if you control a creature power 20 or greater. That's not hard. Guys, we can do that on like turn 6, turn 7. Not hard. So, all right. Sage's Reverie, when it enters the battlefield, you draw a card for each aura attached to a creature. So we're going to draw a lot of cards off that. And the enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each aura you control that's attached to a creature. So that's great. Sarah's Embrace, I like cards like this. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2, has flying and vigilance. One of the only ways I believe we can give vigilance in this deck, or at least the cards that I'm playing. So really cool that I look for keywords that we normally don't have, because like you don't want 15 trample enablers. You don't want 15 haste enablers, whatever. You want them to be kind of balanced out. So flying is obviously good, but yeah, being able to have vigilance is nice so we can keep Uril up as a blocker. Songbird's Blessing, this card's great, and the fact that they made this, I guess that was a year and a half ago, not the last summer, but the summer before, for Wilds of Eldraine. Enchanted creature, whenever it attacks, reveal cards at the top of your library until you hit an aura, then you can put them on the battlefield. If you don't put it in your hand, but this is great. Just lets us cheat auras into play. Sigil of the Empty Throne. Whenever we cast an enchantment, we make a 4/4 White Angel. Kind of helps us create an army. Sphere of Safety. This is great. Prevents our opponents from attacking us. I mean, Sphere of Safety. I mean, we can have as many enchantments as maybe 10. And Sphere of Safety's number, yeah, 10 per creature to attack would be hard. Celestial Mantle. This card is also amazing. Enchanted creature gets +3/+3. Whenever enchanted creature deals damage, combat damage to a player, double its controller's life total. So this is great. Way to just get our life total to insane amounts. Pollen Bright Wings. This is probably one of my favorites in here because I feel like this card never sees play. But in an Uril the Miststalker deck, it's great. You give your enchanted creature flying, and then whenever the enchanted creature deals combat damage to a player, you make that many 1/1 green sapling creature tokens. I mean, I've had Uril up to a 30 power creature, and then I make 30 sapperlings. So it just kind of sets us up for hey, even if I can't kill you this turn, I'm making my army that is going to kill you on the following turn. And it's an insane amount of blockers, which is awesome. Primeval Bounty. This is one of my favorite green enchantments just in general. So if I'm ever like, I don't know what to throw in here to complete this deck, I'll throw a Primeval Bounty in, and it makes sense in just about every green deck. Whenever you cast a creature, make a 3/3 beast. We won't be doing that too often. You guys saw the amount of creatures we're playing, which is like, I think maybe close to, I can count it right here. 1, 2, 3, 4. We run 15 creatures, so, you know, the 3/3 beast, that's whatever, an afterthought. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put 3+1/+1 counters on target creature you control. Let's make Uril even stronger, or one of our backup commanders even stronger. And whenever a land enters the battlefield you control, you gain 3 life. So that is awesome because we have ways to ramp and put a ton of lands into play. So just helping us survive, basically. Prodigious Growth. Enchanted creature gets +7/+7, has trample. I know it's 6 mana, but once again, we have ways to cheat this out. We have ways to reduce the mana cost, and it's just a gigantic buff. It's one of the best ones you can give. Sombrizification, I run this in every red deck. Whenever you cast a spell from your hand, let's say I cast a 5 mana spell, I reveal 5 cards off the top of my library, and if any of those cards is 5 mana or less, I may cast one of those without paying its mana cost. Great card, and it's not once per turn. Colossification, enchanted creature, you tap the enchanted creature, so that this is a cool thing if you can do it on the post-combat main phase, like attack with Uril and then do Colossification. But enchanted creature gets +20/+20, so that's great, and that's a finisher for sure if we can swing with that. It's a shame it doesn't give the creature trample, but I can understand why that probably would be too good to put on one card. And then the last one is Eldrazi Conscription. For 8 mana, enchanted creature gets +10/+10, has trample and Annihilator 2. It's the best aura in the game, honestly, or one of them, and it's the best aura in this deck. All right, so that's my Uril the Miststalker deck. He's a lot of fun to play, and this is just my update to him. This is probably in my top 5 most powerful decks just because he has hexproof, and the Voltron strategy is just really great, especially in these colors. So anyway, that's it for now. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Have a good one, guys. I'll come at you probably in the next week or so with more deck profiles. Thank you.